Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new Pokemon TCG video. Today's deck is going to focus on the Articuno from the Roaring Skies set. So we're going to be making use of its Delta Plus ability, allowing us to take an additional prize card for every of our opponent's Pokemon that we knock out. So Articuno has a very special ability. I really like it, and I wish Articuno could hit for a little bit more damage, but unfortunately with its Tri-Edge attack, even if we do manage to flip a total of 3 heads, its damage really caps at a total of 140 damage. Now if you run the Silver Bangle, it will cap at 170 damage. Muscle Band will only allow us to hit up to a total of 160 damage. So unfortunately, that means that quite a few EX Pokemon are out of a one-hit knockout reach. So what we instead maybe do, depending on the situation, is that we have a secondary attacker. So Articuno is hopefully going to be our main one, but the secondary attacker that we have, guys, is the Keldeo EX. First of all, we can make use of its Rush In ability, and provided that we attach a Float Stone to the Keldeo EX, we can rush in and then freely switch in between our Pokemon. So that's certainly something that is quite nice. The other thing is that the Secret Sword attack hits for an initial 50 damage, plus an additional 20 damage per Water Energy card attached to the Keldeo EX. So if we can latch on a whole ton of Water Energy cards to the Keldeo EX, it can be a very menacing Pokemon. But you guys are probably thinking, well, who would ever want to waste so many turns just attaching a whole ton of Water Energy cards on the Keldeo EX to try and get it loaded up and ready to go? Well, luckily we have that base covered in that we are running the Blastoise with the Deluge ability. So we can use the Deluge ability to attach as many Water Energy cards from our hand to any of our Pokemon in any given turn. So Blastoise is an extremely useful Pokemon. However, I didn't really feel like we had the deck space to dedicate to Water Turtles or the Squirtle, so Blastoise is only going to ever come out at play through the usage of the Archie's Ace in the Hole. Now Archie's Ace in the Hole, of course, is a very peculiar card, sometimes a little bit difficult to play in that we can only play it if it happens to be the last card in our hand. But if we do happen to have it as the last card in our hand, we can then use it to look for any discarded water Pokemon from our discard pile, put it into our bench, and then draw onto an additional 5 cards. So Archie's Ace in the Hole is actually a pretty stellar supporter card whenever it is used properly, and this is going to be our primary method of getting that Blastoise with the Deluge ability onto the bench. To get the Blastoises into the discard pile, guys, what we're going to be doing is that we are going to be running the Battle Compressors, allowing us to discard up to a total of 3 cards in our deck, put them into the discard pile. So ideally what we'd like to do is put 2 of our Blastoises into the discard pile, and probably 1 Archie's Ace in the Hole as well, and then we can either bring out the Archie's Ace in the Hole to produce Travia Seeker, our Jirachi EX, our Computer Search, or of course if we happen to have the Archie's Ace in the Hole in our hand. So we actually have quite a bit of flexibility with respects to trying to bring out that Blastoise Deluge, just because it's such an important component of our deck and really allows our deck to get going that much quicker. The Jirachi EX, speaking of it, guys, it has the Stellar Guidance ability, and again, this the main function of this Pokemon is for us to try and use it for the Archie's Ace in the Hole. Alternatively, we could also use it to look for any other supporter card in our hand if we have, in our deck, if we need to use the Ultra Ball to fetch it out, and we feel like the priority should be grabbing onto a card such as Lysander, the Juniper, something like that. Jirachi EX is a very flexible Pokemon, so we are running 2 copies of him. We're also running 2 copies of the Shaman EX for a little bit of draw support in our deck. Whenever we do lay it down onto the bench, we are able to draw until we have 6 cards in our hand. So Shaman EX is exceptionally important once we do ultimately bring out that Blastoise, and then using those Shaman EXs, we can hopefully get a whole ton of Water Energy cards in our hand and then load up our Pokemon. So Shaman EX is a pretty important Pokemon. We are running 2 copies of him, and the very last Pokemon that we are running in our deck, guys, is 2 copies of the Victini with the Victory Star ability. Again, the main attacker in our deck is going to be the Articuno. However, depending on the situation, we could use the Keldeo EX. Now, to make sure that the Articuno's Tri-Edge attack is a little bit more reliable, Victini is going to come in handy, allowing us to reflip our coins, and I mean, if the first flip we get 3 tails in a row, for example, we can go right ahead and flip those coins all over again, and then hopefully we can get something a little bit more feasible, such as 2 heads, 3 heads, of course, would be the greatest. Even 1 head is better than no heads at all. So Victini is pretty important. We are running 2 copies of him. Some other cards in our deck, guys. We are running a total of 2 copies of the Skyfield Stadium card as our stadium. This is because we're probably going to fill up our bench space relatively quickly. I mean, we're going to be dedicating space to Blastoise, number 1, Keldeo EX probably as well, just to allow us to freely switch in and between our Pokemon, the Victinis, probably some Articunos, which we would like to load up, and of course the Shaman EXs, which will give us some draw support. So Skyfield Stadium card happens to be the most consistent with respects to this deck, again just because we are in need of quite a bit of bench space, so we are running 2 copies of this stadium card. As our ace spec, we're going to be sticking with the Computer Surge. Again, our whole priority and focus is on trying to get out that Blastoise nice and early onto the bench, because that's really when our strategy gets going. So I would highly recommend using the Computer Surge. I don't think it's really replaceable in this deck. I mean, unless you guys want to scrap out the entire Blastoise line and include the Togekiss line instead, then yeah, it's possible to scrap out the Computer Surge. But if you're going to be sticking with the Blastoise, Deluge, and the Archie's Ace in the whole strategy, I would highly recommend going with the Computer Surge as the ace spec. The other cards in our deck, guys, are pretty self-explanatory with the exception of the Superior Energy Retrieval, which I will be discussing. So Superior Energy Retrieval will allow us to discard 2 cards from our hand and look for up to 4 basic energy cards from the discard pile and then put them into our hand. This is just another mechanism with which we can get a whole ton of water energy cards in our hand and then use the Blastoise's Deluge ability. So Superior Energy Retrieval can be nice, especially if we have to go through a lot of energy cards early on into the game while trying to set up that entire Blastoise line. I mean, for example, if we have to use a lot of Juniper's, Computer Searches, Ultra Balls, things like that, that force us to get rid of those water energy cards, that's okay. Superior Energy Retrieval is there just to make life a little bit easier for us. So with that, let's go and quickly take a look at the remaining cards in our deck. We are running 4 copies of the Ultra Balls to allow us to grab onto any of the Pokemon that we need. 4 VS Seekers to make use of our supporter cards all over again. A single Colress, 4 Ends, and 4 Junipers for some draw support. 2 Lysanders to lure out any of our opponent's bench Pokemon. Floatstone mainly to be attached with the Keldeo EX, providing us that free retreat ability. 2 copies of the Muscle Band to increase the total damage output of our Pokemon. And a total of 14 water energy cards. So with that, guys, we're going to go and find ourselves an opponent. I have to say that this deck has actually been quite impressive. I mean, once the Articuno, whenever it knocks out an EX Pokemon, we're able to take 3 prize cards, so that's pretty impressive. That means that we only need to knock out 2 EX Pokemon with the Articuno really for us to be able to win the game. So that's something I'm quite happy about. Looks like the opponent is going to go first, and looks like we're going to start off with the Keldeo EX as our active Pokemon. Okay, so we should be able to bring out the Blastoise turn 1, guys. Provided, of course, that, that we don't get End, and yeah, so I think we should be good. The opponent is going to be playing a Mega Rayquaza EX deck, so we'll see how things go. We're also seeing the Empoleon, so I'm sure the opponent's primary method of getting him out is going to be through the usage of the Archie's Ace in the hole. Battle Compressor, we're probably going to see a couple of eggs going into the discard pile. Maybe some water energy cards as well, and the opponent may use the Mega Turbo to fetch them out and then attach them to the Mega Rayquaza EX. So Battle Compressor is such a versatile card, and I really like it. So let's see what cards our opponent decided to get rid of, and it looks like it's going to be 2 Executes and the Archie's Ace in the hole. So the opponent is probably planning on using the VS Seeker on it a little bit later and then try to retreat that Empoleon from the discard pile. And okay, so that Mega Rayquaza EX has the double colors energy attached to it. Trainer's Mail is gonna get used. The opponent is going through their deck very quickly, guys. They only have 30 cards remaining in their deck. They do have to be a little bit more mindful now, of course, given the fact that the Lysander's trump card is no longer in the game. So let's see what our opponent decides to do. Alright, another Ultra Ball. Probably going to be seeing another Shaman EX coming out, guys. 2 more cards going into the opponent's discard pile. Yeah, I'm going to say it's probably going to be the Shaman EX, most likely, yeah. So for some additional draw support in our opponent's hand, another Rayquaza EX and a Swablu, possibly going to get evolved into the Altaria. And okay, no, it looks like the opponent is finally going to go and end their turn. Alright, so first of all, I'm going to need a Blastoise. So alright, let's go and use the Ultra Ball to get rid of the N in our hand and the Skyfield Stadium card as well. Look for that Blastoise, and then we're going to look for the Jirachi EX. I just want to make sure that we have the Archie's Ace in the Hole in our deck, guys. Just taking a very quick look, and awesome, looks like we do have the Archie's Ace in the Hole. So let's go and grab onto that Blastoise. We will be getting rid of it, and I think I'm going to go and attach the Muscle Band onto the Articuno. Let's go and use the Ultra Ball to get rid of the Blastoise and a Water Energy card as well. Look for that Jirachi EX, and then use that Archie's Ace in the Hole. So I always love getting the Archie's Ace in the Hole turn 1. So let's see, let's go right ahead, use that Archie's Ace in the Hole, bring that Blastoise back into the discard pile, and then draw onto an additional 5 cards in our hand. Let's go and bring out a Articuno, and I can definitely use the Ultra Ball to get rid of 2 cards in our hand, and then bring out a Shaymin EX, which I think is what I'm gonna do. So let's go and attach another Muscle Band to our benched Articuno. Use that Ultra Ball, get rid of those cards in our hand, and look for that Shaymin EX for a little bit of additional draw support. Let's go and lay down. Sorry, it just looks like I'm lagging a little bit. Really hoping that the game didn't glitch out, and okay, awesome, looks like it didn't. And alright, so let's go and use that Deluge ability. I could attack the opponent's Mega Rayquaza EX with the Keldeo EX if that's what I wanted to do. Let's see, so I have I'm really thinking, guys. I mean, I could get rid of some cards in our hand. Sorry, because I could use the Ultra Ball, get some Water Energy cards. Sorry, I'm thinking, and if that is something that I would like to do. No, you know what? Let's simply go and use the Superior Energy Retrieval. Get rid of the Superior Energy Retrieval card from our hand, and the N as well. Look for 2 Water Energy cards from the discard pile, bring them back into our hand, and then I'm gonna go and use the Deluge ability to power up the Keldeo EX. Hopefully we should be able to knock out our opponent's Mega Rayquaza EX during our next turn using one of the Articunos is what I'm hoping for. I mean, we don't have any of the Victinis in our bench just yet, so I don't think using an Articuno to attack would really be a wise option. We're gonna hit that Mega Rayquaza EX for 110 damage. Again, we should hopefully be able to knock it out during our next turn. All we would really need is a total of 2 heads using the Tri-Edge attack, of course, because the Articunos do have the Muscle Bands attached to them, so we should be able to knock out that Mega Rayquaza EX hopefully during our next turn, and then draw onto a whole ton of supporter cards. Draw onto 3 prize cards, so that would be something ideal. Looks like we're going to see the Altaria coming out and another Rayquaza EX as well. If the opponent doesn't have the Skyfield Stadium card, he's not going to be able to knock out the Keldeo EX, so that's why I actually decided not to lay down our own Skyfield Stadium card, because I felt like it would be much more helpful to our opponent's Mega Rayquaza EX as opposed to our own Pokemon. And yeah, so it looks like we're only going to get hit for 150 damage, so unfortunately the opponent is lacking a little bit of firepower. I'm going to go and use the computer search, and okay, so it looks like we're going to see the concession coming from the opponent, so I'm going to go and find ourselves another opponent, guys. I don't think our opponent should have conceived. I mean, I still think that they had a chance, just because again it was relatively early in the game. And okay, so let's see what type of deck we're going to be facing this time around. Hopefully we can go first, and awesome, looks like we are going to be able to go first. And okay, so no good cards in our hand whatsoever. The opponent is probably running the Seismitoad EX, I'm guessing. Just a guess, I could absolutely be wrong. So I'm gonna go and start off by bringing out the Articuno as our active Pokemon. Gonna keep that Shaymin EX in our hand for now, and looks like the opponent is going to start off with the Jirachi EX. So let's go and attach a Water Energy card to the Articuno and a Muscle Band to him as well. Let's go and lay down that Shaymin EX to be able to draw onto some additional cards. Use that N for some new cards in our hand. And unfortunately nothing all that great, so I'm gonna have to go and end the turn. I'm thinking it's quite likely that we're going to be facing Seismitoad EX. I could, however, of course, be wrong, but we'll see. Hopefully we don't get barraged by an assault of lasers, things like that. That would give us a relatively difficult time. We're seeing the Juniper. The opponent is going to get some of their cards into this card pile, and okay, looks like it's going to be a Night March deck, so this should be interesting. I mean, Night March can hit us very quickly. However, in our case, they're going to count pretty much as EX Pokemon, so we're going to be able to hit them and draw onto 2 prize cards whenever we knock out a single Night March Pokemon. So this should be a very interesting battle. I actually have not faced any Night March decks using the Articuno deck just yet. The opponent is going to use the Battle Compressor, probably going to get some additional Lampents into the discard pile, of course, ultimately powering up the Night March Pokemon. And yes, we're seeing 2 Lampents and a Pumpkaboo going into the discard pile. I'd also love to see the opponent bring out the Mew EX as well, because a mere 120 HP EX Pokemon allowing us to draw for 3 prize cards for every knockout. So that's kind of cool. The opponent is going to use the Acrobite, get some more cards into the discard pile. We haven't seen a single Pokemon come out onto the opponent's bench just yet, so I'm not really even sure if that Jirachi EX is going to retreat. And no, so if we had been able to bring out the Blastoise, we could have actually won during this turn, guys, but unfortunately that doesn't look like that is what's going to happen. I think I'm actually going to use the Juniper. I'd like to get that Blastoise into the discard pile, and again, we can relatively easily retreat those water energy cards. So let's go and use that Juniper, get those cards into the discard pile, bring out a Victini. I'm going to go and use the Battle Compressor to get any remaining Blastoises into the discard pile, and one Archie's Ace in the hole as well. I'd like to see just if we have another one in our deck. Awesome, looks like we do, so let's go and get those cards into the discard pile. And unfortunately, I can only use the Chilling Sigh attack. I can't make use of the Tri-Edge attack just yet. Awesome, looks like the opponent's Jirachi EX is going to remain asleep, so that's definitely quite nice. But as you guys can see, it's quite slow and tedious to power up that Articuno if we don't have the Blastoise. So that's just why I've placed such a heavy emphasis in our deck with respect to trying to get it out. Looks like the opponent is going to use the N, and okay, so we should be able to bring out the Blastoise this time around, guys. The Ultra Balls will allow us to trim down our hand and then get the ideal number of cards in our hand such that we can easily bring out that Blastoise. So I'm quite happy for that. All we really need is to bring out one of our Jirachi EXs, look for that Archie's Ace in the hole, and then we can really kickstart our strategy. The opponent is going to use another Acrobike. So we are seeing a whole ton of Night March Pokemon into their discard pile. Hopefully we can knock out our opponent's Jirachi EX and draw onto 3 prize cards, guys. Articuno battles tend to go by very, very quickly once the Articuno ultimately does get going and start hitting the opponent for lots and lots of damage. The opponent could use the computer search to look for a switch. Hopefully that's not the case. They could also, of course, use it to look for a draw supporter, such as the Juniper or an N or something like that. But I feel like, I believe they had just used an N during this turn. Yeah, so they had already used an N. So they've already used their supporter for this turn. However, of course, a switch would allow the opponent to bring out that Pumpkaboo as their active Pokemon and then perform the one-hit knockout on our Articuno. Absolutely something that I don't want to happen, but we'll see how things go. So yeah, the opponent is, yeah, so it looks like the switch is indeed going to come out. That Pumpkaboo gonna hit us for a massive 140 damage, more than enough to knock out our Articuno and then be able to draw onto their very first prize card. I think I'm gonna go and bring out the Victini temporarily. I don't want our opponent to knock out our Shaman EX and then be able to draw onto 2 prize cards. Let's go and use that Ultra Ball to get rid of the Computer Surge and the N from our hand. And what card would I like to be able to bring out at play? I think we're gonna go and stick with a Caldea EX. No, you know what? Let's go and grab onto another one of our Articunos for now, guys, and lay it down onto the bench. So let's go and bring it out. Attach a Water Energy card to him. I'm going to go and use the Ultra Ball, get rid of the Shaman EX from our hand, and the Superior Energy Retrieval as well. Grab out that Jirachi EX, and then look for that Archie's Ace in the hole, and bring out that Blastoise from the discard pile back into the bench. So let's go and bring him out, drawn to additional 5 cards as well. And unfortunately, it looks like the Victini is going to get knocked out. So I'm going to go and use the Deluge ability to attach 2 Water Energy cards onto the Articuno. And unfortunately with that, guys, I have to go and end the turn. I mean, I really wanted to get rid of those Water Energy cards from our hand in case the Blastoise happens to get Lysandered out or something like that, which again is not really something that I'd like. We still have one more Victini in our deck, so hopefully we can bring it out into the bench as well. I'm probably going to use the VS Seeker to look for a N or Juniper. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, N could be a little bit more useful. Actually, no, that would probably help out the opponent. So I think Juniper would probably be the way to go. Although I don't really want to get rid of the Lysanders in our hand. Yeah, let's go and look for another Juniper, guys. I really don't want to lay down another Jirachi EX onto the bench. So let's go and use that, get rid of some cards in our hand. And unfortunately, oh no, sorry, we do have the Victini in our hand. I completely oversaw that. So let's go and lay down a Caldea EX, attach a Water Energy card to the Caldea EX, a Muscle Band onto the Articuno, just to ensure that the opponent's Pumpkaboo is dead. I mean, really what we need is a single heads though, so maybe that maybe the muscle band, maybe a little bit overkill. Let's go and use the tri-edge, 3 tails. That's where the Victini really saves this guy. So let's go and flip again, and awesome, more than enough damage to knock out our opponent's Pumpkaboo and then draw onto 2 prize cards. So this is why I really like the inclusion of Victini in the deck. Victory Star ability is very useful, can potentially help us avoid attacks that do absolutely no damage. The opponent's Draw GX is going to come out as their active Pokemon. So things are not really looking good for the opponent at all at this moment, guys. And looks like we're going to see another Rage Quit. Well, our opponent is going to concede this time around. But yeah, so I think that's pretty much it, guys. So thank you guys very much for watching. If you guys did enjoy this video, please be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And I will see you guys next time.